Is gender all there is to gender-based analysis?
Gender matters!
While it is important to analyze sex and gender in research, they don't exist in a bubble all by themselves. It's just as important to think about other factors that intersect with sex and gender as well. Let's think about it. A very common way of thinking about group differences in psychology is in terms of sex or gender. But people who identify as one gender may be different in a lot of important ways.
Right, so I am a woman, but I'm also white and atheist and queer.
And I'm also a woman, and I'm white, but I'm Catholic and heterosexual. So we're both similar and different.
The issue at hand is that none of us can be described by a single term. We each have multiple identities defined by gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, educational level, and the list goes on.
Psychologists use the term intersectionality to represent and discuss this multiplicity of interrelated categories that people identify with, and the ways that oppression operates in relation to these identities.
There have been calls for more use of intersectional approaches in psychological research. Because we each have multiple identities, no single category can fully capture our experiences. For example, legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw has argued that women of color cannot be represented by either gender analyses or race analyses if these two categories are considered separately. It means that psychologists need to consider how combinations of social categories can be included in their research questions and research design.
But intersectionality is more than the group or groups an individual identifies with. It's also a factor in how we see and judge other people. For example, sociologist David Petula asked white male participants to recommend a starting salary for a job applicant based on a fake resume. Half of the resumes used a white-sounding name, and half used a black-sounding name. Half of the resumes also listed the applicant's role as president of the Student Advisory Council, while the other half listed the same position on the Gay Student Advisory Council. Participants recommended the lowest starting salary for the applicants they believed to be either straight and black or gay and white. In other words, we each hold different stereotypes for different group variations, and this can affect our research in many different ways.
So how can psychologists incorporate an intersectional approach?
Scientists promoting GBA have suggested that in order to investigate how sex and/or gender intersect with other factors, researchers should follow 3 important steps.
Number 1. When designing research, psychologists need to identify all of the possible factors that are relevant to their study. Perhaps race, education, and socioeconomic status are important to the research question. Or maybe sexual orientation and religion should be considered. Who is included in your sample so that you can test the different effects of these factors as they intersect with gender? Would any of these factors reveal subgroup differences that we wouldn't have detected if only sex or gender were used as variables?
Number 2. It is also essential that psychologists define the factors they have explicitly identified. What is meant by disability, for instance? Or how are we defining socioeconomic status? Being clear about what is meant by these terms help both to maintain clarity within the study, but also ensures clarity between the researchers.
Number 3. Psychologists also need to understand how the factors they have identified interrelate with sex and/or gender. These interrelationships help explain or predict any differences that may occur in a study.
Bringing these steps together, psychologists need to consider the various factors that may be influencing participants beyond the categories of sex and gender from the very beginning stages of our research design. They shouldn't be an afterthought.
Remember, sex and gender don't exist in a bubble.
Thanks for checking out our video. Click the link below to explore the rest of the videos in this series.
Also take a look at Psychology's Feminist Voices website for more resources about feminism, gender, intersectionality, and psychology.
Remember, gender matters.